Shovel Knight. It's a game that, impressively, you may have heard the name of. I say that because, despite starting off as only a dream on Kickstarter, the game has grown into a massive franchise in the indie game realm. That's no small feat, considering this wasn't made by a famous billion-dollar company like Nintendo or Sony. It's a prime example of a game that, despite having big shoes to fill, made a lasting impact for nearly a decade now. But let's rewind a bit. Back in 2013, the concept started off as a joke, but grew substantially through some interesting ideas. See, back in the early 2010s, platformers, especially 2D platformers, were few and far between. Except for Nintendo, which found its footing because of the famed games such as Donkey Kong and Super Mario Bros. Way back when in the 90s and the 80s. Those games were a major source of information for Shovel Knight. Mega Man, The Legend of Zelda, DuckTales, and other popular retro games are still quite known to this day, but they aren't without their flaws. The idea for Shovel Knight's shovel drop ability, letting you pogo jump on your foes, was based off the sword drop from Zelda 2, but it was rarely used in that game in a meaningful way. In Mega Man, there were larger, longer stages with bosses at the end, which is a large inspiration for the design of Shovel Knight. But besides the mechanics and design itself, Shovel Knight limits itself in other ways, making it truly have the theme of an 8-bit adventure from the 80s. And it's the visual style for one, but every time you go to another screen, the game fully stops the action while it loads in the next room. It doesn't need to do this, because modern games, even in 2013, were much more powerful than those of the previous century, but Shovel Knight wasn't just a copy of those famous blocky platformers. Like previously mentioned, Shovel Knight started off as a Kickstarter dream, making so much more money than expected, but the game had many promises from the company, Yacht Club Games, including 3 playable bosses, a battle mode, and butt mode. We'll get into that later. So back in the 2010s, Nintendo was the major producer of the old school style games, but Shovel Knight went further than just a throwback. No offense to Nintendo. The game released in 2014 for the Wii U and 3DS, and soon after many other modern systems. But let's stop with the introductions and talk about what made Shovel Knight a wonderful creation. The game stars Shovel Knight, who was once an adventurer with his partner and love interest, Shield Knight. Their quests were many, but after a fateful journey to the Tower of Fate, Shield Knight was trapped inside. This sent Shovel Knight to a life of loneliness and farming, but without his heroic efforts, the valley was conquered by an evil sorcerer, the Enchantress, and her team of knights called the Order of No Quarter. With evil upon the land, Shovel Knight bears his duty to save the valley. The game puts out all this information in a series of images and text, and it already feels like something from the NES. It's quick and simple, and that works in the game's favor. But what about the gameplay? Well, the game immediately digs into that. Okay, sorry. But let's talk moves. Starting off in the standard grass levels similar to the Mario games, the controls are simple to learn, but hard to master. You can strike your shovel at enemies, blocks and dirt piles you come across, jump and press down to bounce off of objects and destroy them and gain height, called the shovel drop. That's it. Okay, it's not that simple, as there's still lots of items and ways for you to mix up the way you play. But as far as gameplay, you'll learn to use these basic mechanics to conquer many challenges and obstacles. There's a lot of variety here. In the first level, you learn to break blocks and paths, bounce off on enemies and other objects such as levels. You can get health through turkeys and apples, collect treasure, and defeat a boss at the end. Black Knight is the first boss you face, who also uses a shovel to pogo jump, but can shoot fire bolts as well. He's a worthy opponent for a first boss. After taking him down, we see the steel shoveler resting at a campfire and fall asleep. These are really charming moments we see after beating levels, and a famous image in the game. Next up, the world map is revealed, feeling similar to Super Mario Bros. 3. It's simple and does its jobs well, but it also has a lot of nice visual stuff. Heading to the village, we see a variety of characters to talk to, including a place to upgrade health and magic, we'll talk about that later, chat with characters to learn skills in the game, and more things that we'll also talk about later. After this, you have a choice between 2 levels, Pridemore Keep, a golden castle, and the Lich Yard, a graveyard. I started with the Lich Yard in my first playthrough, but I think you're intended to beat Pridemore first, seeing as it is easier. Anyhow, visiting the keep, we see a golden castle with more mechanics, such as propeller rats, cauldrons that drop down boiling oil, and even books you have to make platforms of, and while they're on a timer. The game is no stranger to fantastic level design, and this is also one of the game's many plentiful victories. You can also get an item here from Chester, who sells helpful relics. So, relics are items that have a limit of uses by your magic level. See, relics can have higher or lower magic cost, and you can increase your magic in a village. And throughout the game, you can also increase your health by the use of meal tickets. The items are pretty useful, these relics, including a bouncing orb to hit enemies,
fireballs, a sword that lets you fly for a bit, and a temporary invincibility item called the Phase Locket. It is super overpowered. Anyhow, the boss in this level is King Knight, who will jump around and make confetti fall from above. He's a pompous poser of a king and one of many creative bosses with memorable character. The game's characters are full of surprises and personality. Now, because the producer was true to their promises, there were 3 other campaigns made, starring the bombastic Plague Knight, the tragic Spectre Knight, and the previously mentioned King Knight. These were all fantastic in special ways, but because Shovel Knight was now a series of games, the original title was rebranded Shovel of Hope. I'll talk about those other games in other videos. Now, I don't want to get too deep into the details of each level, but know that they all have incredible design and bosses. I really could go on. There's a laboratory of explosions and potions, an ocean brimming with treasure. Really, it's awesome stuff. So what else does the game offer? Well, a lot actually. There are these collectibles called music notes you can find throughout the levels. These can be turned to the village bard, who can play the game's wonderful music. It's a great reward the game gives. The soundtrack is wonderful. I could ramble about the different songs and how each one is so well written, but you can listen for yourself. You can hear it on Bandcamp or YouTube, or in the game itself. There's even a sound test mode. They knew how awesome the soundtrack was. It really is well made. Anyways, you can also buy armor and shovel upgrades. Each has its own pros and cons. For example, some of them will make you take more damage, but gives you more magic. There's a level designed to defeat ghosts with pictures of the game's supporters called the Hall of Champions, a nice side quest. There are these wandering travels on the world map to fight, and the art style makes for diversity in visuals. It really is nice looking. Plus, there's even a huge fish called the Truffle King you can watch dance and get temporary items from called Ickers. Wonderful stuff that makes the game full of memorable content. There's cheat codes too if you want something to change how the game acts. You can have the items unlocked already, less health or difficulty, and a code to change specific words to butt. Yeah, that's butt mode. It's great. Furthermore, throughout the game, you learn about the characters like Black Knight, who refuse to join the Enchantress. For the little story explanation the game offers, you really do get a lot about it. Shovel Knight will have dreams about saving Shield Knight, and this is a repeated theme throughout the game. And after we fight a Black Knight the 3rd time, we learn that the Enchantress was Shield Knight possessed, which is pretty cool. After battling her, Shovel Knight saves his love for real, which is a really satisfying moment after all those practice runs. And a battle ensues with the duo working together against the Enchantress's final form. Shield Knight has to bounce off of Shield Knight's shovel, and they really do work as a nice pair. The tower is destroyed, with Black Knight saving his rival, who both love Shield Knight, and we see the game's ending with the different bosses and Shield Knight's heartwarming return to her partner. It's really sweet. Shovel of Hope is an excellent platformer with well-designed bosses, a fantastic soundtrack, and secrets galore. Now, I'd like to rank the levels and bosses of the game, because these are some very fun things that made me love the game. Now, I'm gonna be getting into spoilers here, so like I said, if you haven't played the game already, you gotta play it, seriously. Especially if you love platformers. And good music. Anyhow. Oh, at this time I would also like to thank Rabid Retrospect Games as I'm using their footage for the video. I didn't ask for permission, but thank you. Anyhow. So at 16, we have the Forest of Phasing. This is a pretty cool level. And it shows you how to use the phase rocket with the use of different spikes, which is pretty cool. At 15 we have the Hall of Champions, which is pretty cool. As this is that ghost level where you have to make your way through the halls and defeat the different ghosts you find along the way. And there's also pictures of the game's backers, which is pretty cool. 14 is Knuckler's Quarry. This is a pretty cool level where you have to break through blocks using the dust knuckles. 13, Frigid Flight. This is the level where you have to make use of the propeller dagger in snow. It's pretty nice. 12 is Plains of Passage. It's the first level where you learn all the cool different mechanics. 11 is Pridemark Keep, a very cool castle level with really nice colors and a fun boss. 10 is Tower of Fate, the Enchantress. It's a great final level for the game, with 2 really fun boss fights and a really wonderful end to the story. And number 9 is the Witch Yard. I would also like to apologize for the camera footage. You can't really see most of the screen. Sorry. Anyways, the Witch Yard is a really cool level, and I think it was one of the first in the game that really made me fall in love with it. With all the skeletons and whatnot. 8 is the Explodatorium. A really exploding, bombastic level. Very funny, I know. with a bunch of potions and enemies you have to take on, which are really cool. 7 is the Iron Whale, a really well-designed underwater level where you have a bunch of treasure to find and a bunch of different mechanics, and it certainly does have the iron aspect. 6 is Lost City, which is a really cool level as you're going through a cavern and there's a bunch of lava and some slime too that you can turn things from lava to slime too, which is really cool. 5 is Tower of Fate entrance, and it combines a bunch of mechanics you saw previously in a really cool silhouette part, and your final encounter with Black Knight. 4 is Tower of Fate Ascent. This is next Tower of Fate level, and the really cool part is at the end of this, after some nice platforming, you have a battle royale with the Order of No Quarter, which are the different knights you fought in the levels, and you can even choose to save them or not after defeat them when they're hanging from the wall, which is pretty cool. Number 3 is the Clockwork Tower. I love clock levels in games, and it's just a very creative one. 2 is the Flying Machine. There's a bunch of cool wind mechanics here, and just some gorgeous visuals. And number 1 is the Stranded Ship. I do have bias as I absolutely love the song here, but it's a really cool snow level with these cool dragon platformers that shoot out rainbows, so yeah. Next I'd like to rank the bosses. At number 8 we have the Big Creep. 18, sorry. No, this is the boss in the Hall of Champions. It's a cool ghost, we have to fire him with light balls. 17 is Reese, who's one of the wandering travelers, and he's this kid who mistakes Shovel Knight for a villain, and he throws around his boomerangs and has fireballs circle him near the end of the fight, which is nice. 16 is Baz, who's this guy who wanted to join the Order of No Quarter but got rejected, who uses whip to swing around the level and strike you with and have lightning appear. 15 is Black Knight, the first encounter in the plains. You have some fireballs and shovels to deal with. 14 is Black Knight's Reprise, which is faster. I think he has more attacks. 13 is the Phantom Striker, who's an interesting traveler as he has a bunch of lightning powers and can zip around the level. Number 12 is Mr. Hat, who uses a bunch of different hats to take you on, and he's obsessed with hats, of course. 11 is King Knight, who's this guy who jump around and have confetti rain. He's pretty cool. 10 is Treasure Knight. He's obsessed with money and will use his anchor to get him around. Number 9 is Black Knight, the Tower of Fate. He has wings here and has the powers of the Enchantress. And he'll fly around, make meteors fall. It's pretty cool. 8 is Spectre Knight, a really cool ghost, as he'll use his scythe to go around and try to hit you and make enemies appear. 7 is Plague Knight, who'll shoot a bunch of bombs and different things at you and have a bunch of different vats of explosions, which is pretty cool. 6 is the Remnant of Fate, a really cool final boss fight where you have to work together with Shield Knight to jump on her. And also the Duck's Knuckles makes this fight easy. 5 is the Enchantress. I think her first form is better. She'll shoot a bunch of fireballs and make platforms disappear, and you have to be careful while she zooms around. Number 4 is Propeller Knight, who's a very cocky knight, and he'll fly around the level, he'll make bombs fall and cannonballs, and he'll try to stab you with his sword. Number 3 is Mole Knight. He's a really cool knight who'll dig through the different walls, and you also have to avoid his fireballs and the blocks he sends at you. Number 2 is Polar Knight, a character that Shovel Knight actually knew Polar Knight for a bit, which is pretty interesting story-wise. So Polar Knight is pretty interesting. He'll throw a bunch of snowballs around and make icicles fall. And finally, number 1, Tinker Knight. He may look small and he throws a bunch of wrenches, but in his second phase, he has this huge kind of like tank mech, and he'll make a bunch of missiles appear, and you have to jump on him and avoid his missile attacks. So yeah. So that's the ranking. So overall, Shovel Knight is a fantastic game, Shovel of Hope, and I'd rate it an 8 out of 10. But its following installments outdid it, and I love them even more. Thank you for watching. I've just been playing so much Shovel Knight recently. It's my latest obsession for video games. Thank you for watching, and yeah, I'll just leave it at the fact that as great as Shovel of Hope is, the following installments are even better. So thank you for watching. Have a good day.